Okay, it's your boy Robski, and we are going to do a book review. This is the latest book I've read. It's not the first of this author by any means. It's not even my favorite, even though the book was quite good. This just happens to be my first book review. So, love it or leave it, I don't care. This will be a good first introductory video. No controversy here. Even though there will be some opinions thrown in, of course. But let's get started. Today I am reviewing the book Stephen King's The Wolves of the Calla. Okay, this is his fifth novel. It's the fifth Dark Tower novel, and it was published in 2003. It has some great illustrations here that I'd like to show. These Dark Tower books are just fantastic, you know. I'll keep throwing this in. I'm actually going to do a segment of how bad the Dark Tower movie, how big of an abortion, how big of a crime it was to put out such a god-awful movie as the Dark Tower movie. I just want to say that the Dark Tower movie is the absolute worst of all time book to movie ever. That freaking director should be directing Child's Play to the local 6th grade play. Terrible. Terrible cast. Terrible acting. The only guy they got right is Matthew McConaughey. But that's a whole different story. And I'll probably keep ranting on how bad it was every Dark Tower book that I review. Anyways. So, back in the game. Wolves of the Calla. Dark Tower 5. We're going to get right into it, okay? The book starts out where Roland and his quartet just get out of the, you know, they had the whole, they were traveling, they got caught up with Flag, and then Flag retreated, and then so they're heading east still, and they come up to this town of Calla, okay? Now, the main thing here, there's so much material, so much backstory. It's just amazing. There's actually two, this is almost like it's two sequels to two previous books in this book. But the main thing is, so Roland and his quartet get up to the town, and it actually introduces us, the first character that stands out is Father Donald Callahan. Now, obviously, and this is, like I said, pretty cliche, you could do videos on this, but Callahan was a huge character in Stephen King's second novel, Salem's Lot. That's what I love about King, is all of his characters, not all of them, but a lot of them, are intertwined with the tower, and they eventually pop up somewhere else. But anyways, so the book actually enters Donald Callahan is talking to the people of Calla, and it says here, it even says this illustration right here, the caption, it says, "Time to be men." What he means by that is the people of Calla know that there is this entity that comes out of the east called the wolves. And what the wolves do is they take these people's twins. Okay, they take these people's they're children, they're twins. The wolves will take them. They'll take them east, and then they'll send them back. And then they come back though with mental problems, and then they turn into something different. They turn in. First of all, they grow abnormally into giants that they're not supposed to. All their mental capacities are wiped out, and eventually they die at the ripe old age of 30. Okay, so basically they lose their kids forever. They don't come back normal, okay? In the book they call it ront, R-O-N-T, ront. Okay, that's a slang for like a mental retardation or handicap, okay? So anyways, that's the problem is the wolves come around every 23 years or so. These people don't know what the hell they are. And they're in this meeting, and we have Donald Callahan, and Callahan's saying, you guys need to man up. You need to grow a pair, and you need to fight against him. And the people of Calla are like, well, We don't know how to fight. We're farmers. We can't fight them. We don't know how. And then, of course, Callahan, who knows more than most, he says, well, there are some gunslingers coming our way, and we're going to hire them to help us fight these wolves. Okay, so that's how it starts. So we get that part, and then we have the quartet. We have Jake, we have Eddie Dean, we have Susanna, and then we have Roland, and then we have the Billy Bumbler, Oi. They are traveling east, but they know that they are being followed by Callahan and his band of Collins, or whatever you want to call them, okay? So, anyways, they go to sleep, and there's strange things happen, and they eat these kind of puff balls that send them to this place called Todash. Todash is like they go to a different world, and it's like everything feels like they're there, except the other individuals in that world don't feel them. They don't see them, they can feel them, they don't see them, and it's like they're there, but they're not. Okay, it's not like world jumping like are themed in a lot of Stephen King's books. Todash is kind of like the Twilight Zone. It's kind of real, but it's not real. But anyway, so they've been going to Todash in their dreams, and this one character, a brand new character, and I feel so bad for Susanna Dean, because before she was two different personalities, Detta Walker and Odetta Holmes. One was good, one was bad. Roland had her look in the door and saw the paradox, and they became Susanna. And Susanna was like the best of both those characters. Susanna had Odetta's kindness and Detta's, warrior side to her. That's for a different view. But now there is a brand new character show up by the name of Mia, which means mother. Okay, now what Mia does is Mia goes kind of in her own Todash, and Susanna is pregnant with a certain being that is assumed to be Eddie's child, but turns out it's not. It's something much worse. And it's not Susanna who's mothering this child, it's somebody named Mia, who is the daughter of no one. Okay, so Mia is taking over Susanna's body, and Mia thinks she's going to this big banquet hall. Really, she's going out in the middle of a swamp, eating frogs and worms and all that crap. Okay, so Roland figures this out, and he's following her. Okay, so this is going on. This actually becomes very key in the last part of the book. Okay, so last part of the book. But anyways, so Callahan catches up to Roland. Let's see. Here's a picture of Mia and Roland. You can see that. You can't really see that, but there's Roland in the background spying on Mia. I love these illustrations, by the way. But anyways, so Callahan catches up to Roland, and the first thing that Jake and Eddie and Susanna are impressed with Callahan is find out that, Callahan's from our world. He wasn't originally here. He came over like we did. Okay, and so Callahan's like, yeah, I'll get into that, but I need you guys to come along, and I need you guys to fight these wolves, basically. Okay, and so they end up siding because it's part of the gunslingers' creed that they have to fight. They're not obligated, okay, but Callahan was going to make a deal, because what else was going on was on the other side in New York, the rose that was it was in this dead avenue, this avenue that used to have buildings. It's not there anymore. It's owned by a man named Calvin Tower. Calvin Tower is first introduced in the third book, but along with this, though, this goes back to 1977, so this is before the killings of the Balazer group, I'll call them. But basically, there's these mobsters representing the Somber Corporation, and the lead guy is Enrico Balazar, and he has a couple thugs. The one that comes the most is Jake Andolini, who's described as a big thuggish type guy. He's kind of the muscle. He's kind of Balazar's right-hand man. So this is going on in our world. Is basically Calvin Tower owns this property that has the Rose, and the Sombra Corporation needs to buy that property, and then so they need to buy that from Tower, and these mobsters are hired by the Sombra Corporation, so they are trying to bully Tower into buying the property from him. Okay, so Roland, Susanna, and Jake, they see all this in Todash space, and they realize that they need to go and save Calvin Tower, buy the lot that has the Rose in it, and you know, they need to go back there. But they can't go back there because they can't open this door that leads them to it. But Callahan says he can help them out. Okay, Callahan has something. So the people of Kala made a church for Callahan so he can go back to his priestly ways. But Callahan has an object that is good and really, really bad. Okay, basically it's kind of a paradox, I know, but the object can help them get to what they need to get done, but yet it's one of the most evil things in the Stephen King universe. Okay, so Callahan has this object. It's called Black 13. And what it is, it's a seeing ball. It's also referred to as the Eye of the Crimson King. Okay, so anyways, Callahan was going to barter that in a wager. So if the gunslingers would help Callahan, Callahan would help, quote, quote, help them. But the gunslinger, Roland, he's like, we're going to help you anyways. You don't need to do that. Callahan's, well, I still want you to have Black 13, whether you didn't help us at all. So it is what it is, okay? It kind of fits. That's what I love about Stephen King. So they kind of have, you know, there's a bunch of characters. There's like Wayne Overholzer, the big farm man, and there's a couple others, Tia Jeffords, Took, a couple other characters I don't really want to talk about. The sisters Riza are, you know, really important to talk about. I'll talk about them later. But anyways, there's all these characters you meet, and Roland goes, and they're at this pavilion, and the town's getting introduced to gunslingers, and then, oh my gosh, Roland shows some sort of human side, and, you know, he dances the kala, the rice dance or whatever, and everyone's all impressed. Yada, yada, yada. Okay, so most of the town is jacked up, like, yeah, these guys are going to save us. These wolves ain't going to be taking our kids now, okay? So Jake befriends, and Jake's very important in this book. He's important in a lot of books, but he plays a critical role in this one. So after that, and by the way, one of the first people they meet, well, he's not a person. He's a robot named Andy, who was built by the front runners, or, you know, he's been around a long time. So we meet this robot named Andy, and then we meet the Slightmans. We have Ben Slightman Sr. and Jake's only friend in the Tower, well, his best friend in the Tower World, ends up being his best friend in the Tower World, Ben Slightman Jr. Okay, so Jake develops this bond with his kid, Ben Slightman, and Ben Slightman thinks that Jake is just the man, which he is, but, you know, he loves Oi. Jake goes and hangs out with him a lot. But his dad has a dirty little secret. Okay, we'll get back to that later. But anyway, so Jake befriends the Slightmans, and they're all doing their little recon. Roland wants to have them make some maps, you know, and so the people of Kala do that. They hear this fairy tale that turns out that this Lady Ariza was betrayed by this evil man, and this evil man basically killed some of her family, and then Lady Ariza negotiated him to have dinner with her, and she was naked, and then she made this plate that was lethal, and she threw this plate and beheaded this man. Well, it turned out that that went through generations, and a bunch of women from Kala and throw plates, which they later show Susanna how to do, and she's one of the best. She actually wants to give up her gun for plates. Okay, so she's throwing lethal plates. One of them, back in the day, actually killed. They don't know how to kill these wolves that come, and one of them actually did kill the wolf. Okay, one of the wolves, and they're still blown away by it. Okay, that's something else important. Okay, so basically, this whole book is set up. They're waiting for the wolves. They're trying to figure out how to kill the wolves. So then it comes to Callahan. Okay, so Callahan tells them a story, and in the first part of this review, I mentioned that this book is basically a sequel of 2 other books. The first one is a book called Salem's Lot, which we first meet Father Callahan. Now, in Salem's Lot, Callahan, as most Stephen King fans know, Callahan has this showdown with the main villain, Barlow, Kurt Barlow. He's the head vampire. What happens is Callahan frees his kid, but in order to do so, he had to give up his cross. Callahan didn't give up the cross. Barlow knew, though, he cheated his promise. Barlow was able to tear the cross down, and then he made Callahan drink his blood. Okay, what that did was made Callahan unholy. So he couldn't be a priest anymore. Callahan, last we find out about Callahan in Salem's Lot, is he gets on this bus, Greyhound, he heads to New York. Okay, so he's telling the quartet, he's telling Roland, Susanna, Jake, Eddie, and Oy, the quartet, they're having a palaver. He's telling the story of what happened to him after the meeting with Barlow. What happened to Callahan is Callahan had was given a power so he could see vampires, and you could see these ones called the Type 3s. Now, Type 3s didn't convert people to vampirism, but they were able to live off other people's blood. Okay, and so he makes this. So Callahan basically hits the skids. He's in New York. He's an alcoholic. He starts drinking. He goes to these shelters. And then eventually he finds this one that they allow alcohol. So he likes it there. And then he starts to make a life. He starts to work. And he meets this guy named Loop, who he actually falls in love with. It's kind of weird how that happens. But he really likes this guy Loop. Okay, Loop's got a lot of charisma. And then he finds one of these vampires sucking on his blood. So Callahan starts killing him. He killed him with the meat cleaver. And then Callahan's like, well, I'm going to go out and start hunting vampires and just kind of, there's nothing for me here now. I'm going to head west. And that's what he does. What we find out, though, Callahan starts killing all these vampires. He's telling all this to Katet, by the way. And the low men find out. Okay, now who are the low men? Now, you got to read. You find out about the low men in this book called Hearts of Atlantis. Okay. The low men are the main villains in Hearts of Atlantis, and that's another book review. But basically, these low men are the hunters. They're like kind of like the ring race in Lord of the Rings. They go and they just hunt shit. Okay, they hunt people. They mainly look for things called breakers. Breakers are humans that have super telepathic powers that try to break the beams, so the Crimson King can get released. Okay, so low men find out about all these vampires dying, and so they put out their, and how the low men communicate is they put out these pet posters saying, have you seen our Irish setter? They don't know who Callahan is, but they say his name's close to Callahan or something. So they put out these posters, that's how they communicate. Okay, and so they don't catch him, though. They don't catch Callahan, and Callahan just keeps going west. And then Callahan, it's the part about the highways and hiding. Callahan is starting to shift into different time periods in our world. So the time portals or what have you, the tower's getting weaker, so Callahan will go down this highway and he'll all of a sudden be in 1960 something when he was in 1970 something, or 1980. He was in 1980 something, then he was in 1970 something, And he just keeps going down this, okay? Now, this all, like I said, Stephen King's books all relate to this, and this makes more sense if you got to read. You can't just read the Dark Tower books. You have to read everything else, okay? So Callahan keeps going, and these damn low men are after his ass. They don't catch him, okay? And then the low men kind of follow him, and all of a sudden, he doesn't see anything from vampires. He doesn't see anything from low man. He's just kind of good. Then one day, his buddy Luke dies. Okay, so he goes to the funeral. That's when things get real. Okay, so he goes to the funeral, talks to his mom, Luke's mom, person who died, and then, you know, he's like, well, what I'm going to do is I'll go back west and I'll go work for the shelter. Gosh, where did he go? Was it Detroit or somewhere like that? So he goes and he's working for this different shelter, and then all of a sudden this entity says, hey, congratulations, you won this much money. You won millions of dollars. So they trick Callahan, and basically they tell Callahan's bosses that they won this prize, right? So Callahan goes, and they go up to this tower, and they go in this room, and they're escorted. It kind of reminds me of the scene in Empire Strikes Back when Lando Calrissian is escorting all our heroes, Han and Leia and Chewbacca, thinking they're going to have some dinner. All of a sudden, Darth Vader's there. Well, what they do is they go in, they're all like, oh, yeah, it's all good. You know, we won all this money. And they escort him, and there's all these creepy vampires and the creepy low men. They're looking at him. They killed the other two, Callahan's other two buddies, and Callahan's like, oh, I'm screwed. You know, so Callahan's all in all this. He's in this room, and there's those creepy low men. Ugh, don't like the low men. And then there's, you know, some vampires, and they're like, we got him. Callahan's like, no, I'm not going out this way. So Callahan busts ass. He goes through the window, okay? So Callahan goes, and we don't know if he dies or not. But he basically goes through the window, and then he's like he's floating. And then all of a sudden, he goes, this is where the other sequel comes in. He goes and he's transported to the way station. Okay, the same way station that Jake portaled into in the first book. Except this time, he missed Jake, and he missed Roland. There, he describes him as specs. There's somebody else in the way station. And we all know who it is. It's pretty easy to know who this guy is. He shows up a lot. Of course, there's one other guy. It's the man in black. It's Walter. Walter's there. And Walter expects him to be there. And Walter's impressed by Callahan, because Callahan can see, and the reason why I'm calling this guy Walter is because I'll get into that. I'll do a specific, because Walter is like, to me, he's probably, if not the most important, one of the most important characters in Stephen King universe, okay? He goes by many aliases. Okay, so anyways, he meets Walter, and Walter's there, and Walter's really creepy. Walter has, you know, he's pale white and turns into demon, and he's like, he's not really quite human. He's half human. But anyways, Walter's impressed because Callahan can see the two little specks. And Callahan's like, oh my gosh, who the hell are you? He's like, oh, it doesn't matter who I am. You know, I'm Walter. Just call me Walter. He's like, but I have a specific assignment for you. And Walter gives Callahan 13. Basically, Walter says that if those two don't die in the mountains, or the lobstrosities don't get to them, I'm going to have them get to you, and you're going to give them that, and you're going to totally jack up their life. What actually happens? Callahan doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Callahan thinks he wasn't sure if he was dead. Callahan doesn't know what the hell is going on. And Walter makes references. It's funny because Walter makes references to lobstrosities. So, Walter is the most enigmatic enemy. I mean, I just don't get this guy. That's what makes him so awesome. So, old Walter gives him the ball, and he says, if you play your cards right, you can have a nice life. But basically, you're going to this town, Calla, and you're going to wait for these guys if they're still alive. He even says, did a chalk. Like he says, I mean, he's just laughing and just evil, evil dude. So Walter pushes Callahan through another door. Now Callahan's in Calla, and Callahan stays there for the last 20 years until they come up and they finally meet the guns, the wolves of Calla, all that stuff. And then wise, Jake is distressed because Jake tells Roland that, hey, Walter was behind us the whole time the man in black was behind us. He wasn't in front of us, he was behind us, which totally blows your mind. And Stephen King does this so well. So we find out that Walter basically knew Callahan was coming. I don't know how he knew, but Callahan was there. Walter was there. And then so Callahan's set up where he needs to be. Then Walter then jumps ahead of Roland and Jake, and it's like I said, the prequel to the first book. We know what really happened now. Okay, so anyways, Callahan tells him that story, and there's many other references in this book that I can go over. I mean, there's reference from Black House. Jake is looking in the rose, and Jake sees this kid saved by 4 other dudes, and there's this monster and we all know now the monster's Malshin. You gotta read Black House. You gotta read all his work, because it's all the work that Stephen King does is tied to the Tower. It's a must read. It's a must read. But anyways, but there's so many references. So anyways, getting back to it, and so Jake's all frustrated because he could have, he wouldn't have had to die. Roland let him die. He wouldn't have had to go through that. And it's just frustrating because it seems like that this Walter dude, the man in black, it's like he's like Gandalf of bad guys. It's like he's never there, then all of a sudden he's always there, So anyways, that's Callahan's backstory. To get done with that, and like, it's great. Okay, so now what are we going to do about these wolves, right? Well, after that, they kind of go on their assignments, and Jake, like I said before, is living temporarily with this guy named Ben Slightman and his dad. Well, he finds out his dad has been having strange meetings with Andy, the robot. And after his dad has his meeting with Andy, his dad heads east towards Thunderclap. Jake knows that's not bad because he spied on him, and always spied on him. But he didn't want to tell Roland because he didn't want to get Dad's trouble. Well, what Jake does is Jake follows Mr. Slightman, and they go to this place. They call it the Dugan, but basically it's like a hub. And then Jake finds out that Andy and Ben Slightman Sr. are spying on all of them, all the people of Calla, and they're reporting to Thunderclap, to this strange voice. Okay, so Jake does his mission, and eventually lets Roland know what's going on. So Jake's doing that. Meanwhile, while Jake's doing that, we got Susanna training with the Sisters of Ariza, throwing the plates, and Roland and Eddie are just basically preparing the town to fight these wolves. Okay. Well, they find out what the wolves really are. Okay. The wolves are nothing but they're robots. Okay. The robots. Roland is figuring this out slowly, okay? Because when he killed Shardik, they had the thing on his head. Well, they eventually get the town together, and Jake finally tells Roland what Ben Slightman and Andy are all about. So Jake's like, Roland, who's so smart, calls another palaver with the whole town. They're in the pavilion again, okay? And they're like, well, these wolves are the undead, and to kill them, you have to hit them in the heart or the head. And the reason why he's saying this is because he knows that Andy is listening, and he knows Andy will report all of this to the wolves, to Thunderclap, to the bad guys. Okay, it's really brilliant. You gotta read the book. It's really brilliant how he does this. But he says this, and he has all this, and so the whole town's like preparing, and then they basically do a fake preparer for Andy, and then Eddie tells Andy that hey, he's got some guns. You know, he goes with Tia Jefferson. He's like, hey, we got some guns, Jeffords or whatever. You know, Andy, could you come help us? You know, these guns are critical to blowing up these wolves. Okay. So Andy doesn't know what's going on. Andy doesn't know that they know. Andy goes with them. Then Andy gets his brains blown out by Eddie, who, by the way, is my favorite Dark Tower character. I love Eddie Dean. So they figure this out, and they call Ben Slightman out. And meanwhile, Mia is taking over Susanna's body, but Susanna begs Mia, hey, look, could you let me at least fight this fight, and then I'll do whatever you want. Mia's like, I'll even help you fight this fight, but as long as I get to have my kid, which is a demon spawn, because Susanna had to have sex with this demon so Jake could come through. That's the third book. You got to read. Okay. So they come out, and they're getting ready for the wolves. They have all the wolves. They're ready to roll. Meanwhile, though, I forgot to mention this part. They have Callahan. I forgot to also mention Callahan's story. He gets saved by Calvin Tower. And then they go back. It was Callahan also went back to check on him. But mainly Eddie went back and told Calvin Tower to, first of all, he messes up. Eddie goes back, messes up Jake Andolini and some other Balazar's thugs, which is really brilliant because he ends up killing him in the second book. But, you know, Eddie's totally bad to the bone in this book, and he's like, you tell Balazar to quit messing with Calvin Tower, okay? And Calvin Tower is, Calvin Tower just doesn't get it, right? And Eddie has to persuade him to work, and so Calvin says, well, I'll persuade you, but you got to save my books because they're going to burn the place to ground. So Eddie agrees, and all these books come into Roland's world through the portal. And then meanwhile, Calvin and his buddy Aaron Depnew, they hightail it on to New Hampshire and start hiding away from these thug guys, okay? This is so they can hide away from Balazar. So that's going on. And then, Eddie has to go back. And then we're finally to the day of the wolves, okay? So the wolves come from the east. And the first part of Roland's plan is he has 4 kids, Jake, Ben Slightman, and 2 others, to go forward and lay the scent, quote-unquote, the scent for the wolves. Well, they do that. One of the kids' foot gets caught. Becomes a big deal, but eventually Jake and Benny Slightman Jr. and this kid's sister, they all save him. They go back, and they're all posted up. And so anyways, they start fighting the wolves. The wolves have these things are like lightsabers, which is really cool because this book was written in 2003, so there's stuff from Harry Potter and there's stuff from Star Wars. And you might think it's lame, but once you read it, it's just like, oh, it's just so awesome. So anyways, they eventually, there's like 63 wolves, and the wolves, they're just doing what they're programmed to do. Well, not this time, okay? Andy's dead. Ben Slightman is called out. They know how to kill wolves now, and right before the wolves get there, Roland tells them how it really is. Says, yeah, I was just bull crapping you. They're not really, spawn of vampires. They're robots. And you just got to hit the top of their freaking head. They're cloaked with the green cloaks. So they just slaughter these wolves, right? And these death bots, or these they're just robots, right? They slaughter them. Whole town goes crazy. Roland's the man. Eddie's the man. They love him, but as soon they had a little time to party and celebrate, couple things, Benny Slightman Jr. is killed along with one other person. So his dad's all pissed off because his dad, the ironic thing is his dad, Ben Slightman Sr., was working with the wolves to try to save his son Benny Jr., and in doing so, he lost his son anyway. So it's better, and it's kind of a moral thing, but basically the moral story is just tell the truth. And don't be, don't be doing these conspiracy things, okay? So, Benny Slightman Jr. dies, and Jake's all upset. But then Jake, he mans up. He's like, Roland, give me a cigarette. Roland's like, all right. So Jake's developing. Jake's growing up too fast. Still has Oi, though. Still has Oi. Then Mia takes over, and Susanna's no longer there. Mia starts hightailing it to the door in the cave where everything was going on down, like, going to Calvin Tower's world and back. Susanna's heading there, and she takes Black 13. And this is where the story ends, and this is setting up for the 6th book, which I kind of could see this coming. About midway through the book, I pretty much knew the plot of the book. I knew the wolves. I knew pretty much what the wolves were halfway through the books. I knew something was going to be done with Susanna. Sure enough, so Mia takes over Susanna. She goes, and she's heading back to our world through the door with Lucky 13. And somebody left her, so after wheelchairing work, somebody left her like a tripod, like a motorized tripod, so she can weigh from the quartet. Now, people say it's Andy. I think it's Walter. Walter always does shit like this, okay? Stuff like this. So she goes, and then the door's closed forever because Lucky 13 is on the other side. But then, so Jake, Eddie, Oi, and then Callahan are up there. And Callahan's now part of their quartet. And they have to go get Susan. They also have to deal with the stuff with Balazar and Calvin Tower. And what they're doing is they're going through the books that Calvin Tower left. And then it really freaks you out because Callahan pulls Salem's Lot. And so now it's like a whole big paradox that I can't really explain. We have to read. Basically, the story ends. Mia goes to the door. The quartet needs to get through the door. And there you have it. That's the end of the book. Sets it up for the 6th book called Song of Susanna, which makes total sense. Total sense, okay? I'm going to go on a rating system on this book. Like I said, I love the illustrations that whoever did these are just phenomenal. If we go 1 through 10, and how you're going to learn through my rating system, if I give something a 5, that's not a bad score. A 5 is average. Period. I don't care what I'm rating. If I give you a 5, I'm not insulting you. It's average. Okay. This book is well above average. Okay. I'm going to give it a solid, we're in the 7 or 8 range of this book. Probably 7. Okay. It's a phenomenal book. I love this book. It's one of the better Tower books I've read. Awesome book. It's not his best Dark Tower book in my opinion, but it's definitely, it's a great read. I love it. I love Wolves of the Calla by Stephen King. Get out there and read it. But before you read this book, look at my video to tell you what books to read in order so you're not confused. Okay? And there you have it. That's my first book report.